I would like to ask the Chief Minister when he plans to implement the recommendations of the Arup review of the Laxey flood, and if he will make a statement.
For the Chief Minister to reply, Mr Quayle.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank the honourable member for the opportunity to provide a statement on the Arup report. Firstly, I do want to express to the Honourable Court my deepest sympathy and regret to those affected by the terrible floods last October. My heart went out to those affected when I visited the homes immediately after the flood. We asked Arup to independently review what happened and lessons that could be learned by the government in order to prevent this happening again. They have produced a detailed report, and I would like to thank them for their hard work. I would also like to thank the residents of Laxey and their representatives, both at Garff Commissioners and the honourable members for Garff, Mrs Caine and Mr Perkins, for their assistance in providing evidence and working with Arup to produce the report. Nobody wants people's homes to be flooded. It is our priority to continue to build more resilient future communities and protect them and their homes to the best of our ability from unfortunate events such as floods. Our efforts don't stop here. Arup has made 10 recommendations, all of which will be implemented in full. I have asked the Chief Secretary to oversee delivery of these recommendations on my behalf. I cannot give an exact time frame at this stage for the implementation of each of the recommendations. I hope I have been consistently clear that I view this as a priority. I am also conscious that the honourable member has other questions on today's order paper, which will no doubt provide further detail on progress made so far by the Treasury, the Department of Infrastructure and Manx Utilities. Thank you, Mr President.
Supplementary, Mrs Caine.
Thank you, Mr President. And I thank the Chief Minister for his statement. I think the particular aspect and recommendation I'd like the Chief Minister to address is the recommendation that there is a higher authority responsible for ensuring that all the recommendations, along with the National Flood Strategy, are implemented. And is it intended that the office will be properly staffed and resourced, including budget, to enable the recommendations, both of this review and the flood strategy, to go ahead, particularly in reference to Laxey, but in fact for the whole island?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank the honourable member for her points. First of all, as I said, Mr President, we will be hearing from other departments on the same topic, and I have no doubt the Minister of each chair will be in a position to provide an update on these areas. I'm also aware that just yesterday the Chief Secretary chaired a meeting with senior officers to discuss driving forward the implementation of these recommendations. Now, of course, I have committed to all 10 being implemented, and when I have the latest thinking of how this will happen and the comments raised by my honourable colleague for Garth, I will of course share this information with all members of this honourable court.
Honourable Member for Garff, Mr Perkins.
Thank you, Mr President. Would the Chief Minister confirm to allay public concerns that this report is the original one and has not been amended or redacted to make it more acceptable to the public? Thank you, Mr President.
Thank you, Mr President. This report was independently commissioned. Arup have delivered the report. Obviously, there is always elements of clarification to make sure that what they've said is technically correct and not disputed, and then it's put out to the public. I did share it not just with members of this honourable court, but in advance I did give honourable members of Garff advance notice, along with the local commissioners and members of the public whose homes had been flooded, Mr President.
Supplementary, Mrs Caine.
Thank you, Mr President. And again, the Chief Minister's sympathy for the residents who were affected in Laxey is very welcome. But can he give any indication or reassurance to those residents that the actions being taken and the time frame for implementing those recommendations will give them any reassurance that they won't face the same impact of flooding should there be considerable rainfall as we come into the winter period?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. And I'm more than happy to clarify again that I've told the Chief Secretary that this is a priority for myself and the Council of Ministers. I would also like to point out that within a very short period of time we had seen the wall being totally replaced along the river in Old Laxey Road, and that, along with the weir being taken down within hours of the flood at my request, would hopefully show all honourable members that I mean to make this happen as soon as possible.
Supplementary, Mr Perkins.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank the Chief Minister for his comments on that. Would he agree with me that it's vitally important for the 4,000 households across the island, not just Garff and Laxey, but the other areas, that we do need to make sure we rebuild the confidence that they have that this flooding will not happen again?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. And I can agree with most of what the Honourable Member for Garff, Mr Perkins, has said. It is really important that the public feel reassured that this administration and Tynwald has a good policy in place to protect our residents from flooding or their homes being flooded. However, I cannot give a blanket guarantee that this will not happen. That nature is a very powerful beast, and whilst we will do our utmost to reduce the impact of any flooding going forward, we cannot guarantee that it will not happen, but we can guarantee that we will do our utmost to make sure that we have proper procedures in place and that the clearing of streams, etc., with debris is looked at, and where reports state walls need to be built or strengthened, etc., then we will, of course, take action. Thank you, Mr President.
Final supplementary question, Mrs Caine.
Thank you, Mr President. I'd just like to ask the Chief Minister to go back to my first supplementary and the point that he will be aware there was criticism in the report for the Manx utilities who, when advised by Garff commissioners and public feedback of concern over tree debris left at Glenroy, declined to do anything about it. And the point about having a flood czar or a senior person at a strategic level is the ability to have the higher authority to order the various different government departments and boards to take action. And the report calls for that post, a flood czar or strategic lead, to be in post with adequate resources, staff resources and budget, and can he confirm that that is something that will be immediately put in place as a result of the meeting that the Chief Secretary had with senior officers recently? Thank you.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President, and I apologise to the Honourable Member for Garff if I wasn't clear enough in my initial answer, but I have committed to delivering on all 10 recommendations as soon as possible, and I've told the Chief Secretary it is a priority, so that's not just one of the recommendations that the Honourable Member feels passionate about, that's all of the recommendations, Mr President, and I do commit that when we have the clear framework going forward on these recommendations, to share that with all honourable members. And I also look forward, I shared the report in advance with the chair of the Tynwald Environment and Infrastructure Review Committee, and invited the committee to consider if they wish to pursue any further investigation into this incident. I want to get this right going forward, Mr President, and I share the concerns that the honourable member for Garff has on all recommendations, not just the one on setting up a czar.